Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
The cost of a foreclosure isn't just to the financial institution and to the shareholders, nor just the family that's being foreclosed upon, but it's the neighbors across the street, it's the schools that are losing students, it's the small businesses that are losing customers, it's the churches that don't see the same people coming through. Foreclosures are killing our neighborhoods.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. When President Obama unveiled his administration's mortgage relief plan on February the 18th, Congressman Steve Driehaus tried to explain why the foreclosure crisis impacts people and communities far beyond those who face foreclosure themselves. The Homeowner Affordability and Stability Plan has three key elements. First, the plan seeks to help 4 to 5 million homeowners who are making their mortgage payments but own homes whose values have dropped below the size of the mortgage. The plan helps them refinance at the current low mortgage rates. Second, $75 billion will be made available to help 3 to 4 million homeowners whose mortgage rates have risen to 40 or 50% of their income. The goal will be to refinance, lower their payments, and allow them to stay in their homes. Third, the plan proposes steps to strengthen confidence in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that will secure future mortgage markets. In announcing the plan, President Obama tried to anticipate the objection that this plan helps irresponsible homeowners and real estate speculators.
It will not rescue the unscrupulous or irresponsible by throwing good taxpayer money after bad loans. It will not help speculators.
To discuss the potential implications of the federal plan as well as an Ohio initiative to address the current crisis, I am joined by Mark Lawson, an attorney with the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati. Mr. Lawson is part of a team of legal aid lawyers focused on helping people who face foreclosure or who might face foreclosure in the near future. And Denise Driehaus, the newly elected member of the Ohio House of Representatives for the 31st District, a seat vacated by her brother Steve, who we heard at the beginning, who was elected to Congress. Welcome to Newsmakers. Mark, welcome back. Denise, welcome. Steve has long time been a regular, and just to take care of the question of whether you were related, I thought I'd clarify that right at the beginning.
I appreciate that. I'm Steve's older sister.
Older sister.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then put Steve in his place.
That's right.
Okay, Mark, the regs, as I understand it, for the federal plan are supposed to come out sometime this week. Is it the 4th?
March 4th, that's correct, yeah.
Now, we don't know exactly what's going to be in there. We just know the broad outlines. What will you be looking for? You've been living with this foreclosure crisis now for well over a year. What will you be looking for in those regs? What will tell you something that important is happening here?
Yeah, let me just say, Dan, this is the boldest plan that we've seen so far, and we think it's going to be great. What we're looking for, we'd like to see requirements that lenders actually do loan modifications, restructure mortgages so they're fair and affordable to homeowners. Right now, all the plans have been voluntary, and lenders frankly haven't really done that, and they take a long time to do it. So if there's something required in there, if the lenders who receive TARP money are required to do loan modifications, that would be something we look for.
They would be required to do loan modifications for everybody or within certain guidelines about the person who holds the mortgage? How would those required modifications, how would you require a bank to modify?
Right, it would have to be guidelines. And you can see in the analysis of the bill already, the summary, that the government, if the lenders are encouraged to write down principal or loan modifications to get homeowners to pay up to 38% of their income, then the government would match down to 31%. So those kind of requirements, we would think would be great.
And some people are at 40, 50% of their income and simply can't make those payments. So the goal is to get the banks to bring it down to 38, and then the federal money would help bring it down to 31%, which is more traditional, what people ought to be paying for.
That's right. And we spend a lot of time at Legal Aid trying to work out these loan mortgages to make them fair and affordable, and they take a long time. Lenders are not, either they're swamped with cases and can't do as many as they like, it takes forever. And it takes us a long time, and it expends resources. We've got a lot of volunteer lawyers willing to do this work, but they can't do it because they can only do a few, and there's so many that we just can't do it all.
So you need policies.
We do.
Denise, one of the things about this is that this is just a ballooning problem, and more people are facing either they know foreclosure is coming, they fear they're going to lose their job, and they're going to face foreclosure, whatever. You have introduced legislation, co-authored some legislation that's in the Ohio House right now. One of the aspects of this in yours that I don't think is in the federal is a moratorium. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have sponsored legislation with Representative Mike Foley from Cleveland, and it's very comprehensive, but a large piece of it is a moratorium. It's a 6-month moratorium on activity on foreclosures. You can still file the foreclosure, but there won't be any activity to remove those folks from the home. And I think it's important to understand why a moratorium and why now, because we've been talking about this for a long time. My brother Steve talked about this, he's been talking since 2001. But with the Obama plan coming down and some federal monies coming down to help homeowners, I think it's important now to call a timeout, to allow people to take advantage of what's coming down from the federal government so we can actually start to keep folks in their homes. And also, as I said, we've been dealing with this for a long time, and the communities are suffering. And, I talked to a guy the other day who just remodeled his kitchen and assumed his property value would go up. The guy next to him foreclosed. His property value is now going down. So as it was alluded to earlier, it's impacting everybody, and it's time to take a time out. Let's stabilize, let's get legal aid opportunity to ramp up, home preservation groups a chance to ramp up, and give us some time to put things in place. And I know we're going to talk about servicers later, and that is a part of this as well.
Mark, how important in your mind is a timeout, a moratorium, a 6-month moratorium? Would that be significant?
Well, Denise is exactly right. It is significant. It's crucial. It's really a bridge to where we want to get to having more homeowners with fair and affordable loans. And this during the 6 months, we're not going to sit on our hands. We've got housing counselors ready to do work, legal aid lawyers, volunteer lawyers. Things are going to be happening. And Denise is right that the federal legislation, her own bill is in place. There are things coming down the road that makes timeout very important. There's also this legislation about changing the bankruptcy laws. If that comes down, this is more reason to call the timeout.
Change the bankruptcy law. What's the focus of that change? What would happen if that change took place?
Well, this to me has always been the single most important thing that can happen to really stem the foreclosure crisis, and that is to allow bankruptcy judges to modify mortgages inside of bankruptcy. Give the judges that power. This will obviously help people that have to resort to bankruptcy, but will also let homeowners modify their loans outside of bankruptcy, because this is going to incentivize lenders obviously to negotiate more in good faith, because they know there's the stick of the bankruptcy down the road.
One of the things, and you mentioned it sort of as an offhand, and we talked about this before we went on the show, that we wanted to talk about servicers, because I know in the federal proposal it talks about servicers, and I got a feeling that a lot of people don't recognize how important a role. First off, who are these mortgage servicers, foreclosure servicers? What are we talking about? Who are these people, and what role do they play?
Do you want to take that?
Go ahead.
I need to take that. Yeah. Well, the servicer, when a person goes into foreclosure and they go into the foreclosure hearing, the servicer is the one that is representing the investor. The investor, and this is another piece of the legislation, these investors are who knows whom. They're in Germany. They're foreign entities.
Deutsche Bank.
They're all mixed together. Nobody can really identify who the investor is. So part of the legislation actually says when you go into that hearing, the investor needs to be identified, because the borrower is at a disadvantage. They don't even know who they're talking to. So the servicer becomes the intermediary between the investor and the borrower, and they have the power, or should have the authority, to remodify a loan, because they're the ones sitting in the room. At this point right now, there is either not an incentive or no authority to do the remod of the loan. So when the borrower gets there, the judge is sitting there, the servicer has no incentive to remodify, and they go into foreclosure. So that's a big part of the problem.
In fact, as I understand it, it's even more than that, Mark. The servicer has an incentive to go ahead with the foreclosure.
They do.
They get paid by foreclosing on people, right?
They get a flat fee. And what they do is they advance the cost. When somebody's delinquent, they're advancing costs. They're shelling out money. So the faster they foreclose, the quicker they recover and get out of what they're shelling out. And they're also stuck because of what Denise was saying about the investors and these things called pooling and servicing agreements and the whole securitization where of mortgages where if the servicers do a modification, they might be affecting some investors differently than others. Some investors might benefit, some might not. They're afraid of getting sued.
So in the federal legislation, as I read it, and I know the regs aren't out yet, but as I read it, servicers would get an upfront $1,000 plus if they then modify a loan and for the next, is it 3 years, that homeowner makes their payment, they get more payments for the next 3 years. Is that right? They can make up to about $4,000 by agreeing to rework the modification?
That's right. That's right. And I like that. I like that kind of incentive for servicers to do loan modifications and to do good ones. I think we've heard a lot about loan modifications redefaulting and putting that blame sometimes on the borrowers. But what we see is actually the servicers putting borrowers into loan modifications that they can't afford and don't have a chance to afford. And so with incentives, I think, for successful loan mods, I think this is going to help everyone.
Now, one of the questions, issues that I think your legislation takes on a state level is the licensings of these servicers. Is that correct?
That is correct, because right now they're not licensed. So we have no way of tracking trends of servicers, who's doing the remods, who's not doing the remods. And I think there is an understanding statewide that it's in all of our best interest to have people stay in these homes and renegotiate the loans. And so what we've decided to do is regulate the servicers, and many other states are doing this already. And when you talk about incentives, I do want to point out too that part of the legislation calls for a $1,500 fee to file a foreclosure. So it's disincentivized to file the foreclosure.
Who would have to pay that fee?
The servicer.
The servicer would pay the $1,500.
That's right. So, and the reason for the increase in those dollars, there's already a fee in some places, but some of that money is going to go to the Supreme Court, where they will be tracking the database, keeping that up to date. Some of it will go to the Department of Commerce, who will be actually doing the licensing and regulating the servicers, and then the rest of it will be split between home preservation groups such as Legal Aid and others, Price So Will, that are already doing this counseling work to keep folks in their home. And then the other piece goes to local governments, because as you know and as we all know, local governments are suffering trying to deal with vacant properties. We can't find the investor that actually owns the property, yet the grass is high, the copper's been stolen, the windows are broken, and so the local government then has to pay to remediate that property. So some of the money will also go towards that.
You know, you've already said this, but I want to drive it home. The people that a homeowner is dealing with in foreclosure is this servicer. That you think it's the bank, but that bank, because of the way we have packaged loans, sold them, can be very distant and really impenetrable for people. I just want to stress that, Mark, that this is an amazing point to me that I've sort of learned as we read about this whole process.
Yeah, the old model of the bank at the corner holds your loan forever.
Savings and loan
is out the window, and you're not dealing with that person anymore. You're dealing with a servicer, a huge servicer that's nationwide, and you can't get a person on the phone. You have to. It takes forever, even for legal aid lawyers or for housing counselors. And the intuitive notion that if you would make the argument that a lender would lose money, more money by going to foreclosure with, say, 20% value getting back on the loan, but that argument doesn't work anymore because of this securitization and everything's on Wall Street. And so the argument that it costs more to foreclose doesn't really work anymore. And you really have to get these incentives and force these lenders to modify the mortgages.
Okay, realistically, people ought to be trying to deal with issues before they get to foreclosure. And my understanding is Legal Aid now has a new program with some new funding to allow you to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct. We got a $500,000 grant just recently, partnering with the Homeownership Center of Greater Cincinnati, and as well as other counseling agencies. And this is to do pre-foreclosure work only. If the case is in foreclosure, that's not part of this grant. This is exciting for us because we didn't have the capacity in the past to help people who are not yet in foreclosure. So now we're reaching out and touching probably upwards 1,500 to 2,000 families that are not in foreclosure yet, that we can advise, review their legal documents, and give them help on negotiating their loans with their servicers. So we think this is going to, obviously 2,000 homes, could be affected.
It's a lot better to be ahead of the game than end up in the situation and then try to figure a way out of it. That's really difficult. But the federal legislation, at least the part we've been talking about, really deals with people who are in the pre-foreclosure level. Not once you're in foreclosure, federal legislation doesn't exactly deal with that. Am I correct on that?
Well, I think that I'm not sure that that's exactly right. I think that President Obama's plan, one of the good parts about it actually is that it helps people whether they're delinquent or not delinquent.
Okay.
All
right. Well, I'll learn more. Denise, where does your legislation stand? What's sort of the timetable? How much support do you think you have?
We had testimony this week in committee. Mike Foley, Rep. Foley, the co-sponsor, chairs that committee. And so we had kind of a framing of the issue. We had the bankers come in, we had home preservation groups come in, and we talked broadly about the issue because it is comprehensive legislation and the issue is difficult. It's been going on for a long time. It's kind of hard to get your arms around. So it really, to the benefit of the other legislators, these folks came in, talked about the issue. The bill will be introduced, sponsor testimony this coming week. We'll have proponent and opponent testimony, and then we hope to move it out of committee by March. Then it'll go over to the Senate, and we'll see how we do. But I do want to clarify one thing. The moratorium is on residential property,
right.
1 to 4 units, occupied property. Vacant properties are not part of the moratorium, and so we think the upshot will be that while the others are stalled or are waiting for a remodification on the loan, vacant properties are going to go to the top of the list. And so those will be dealt with, so all the empty houses in our neighborhoods will be off the docket by the time we're able to deal with the other ones.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very complex topic, important work being done locally and on the state level. Thanks a lot. Have you back as this continues to mature.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. You can find out more information about the government foreclosure program on our website. Go to local12.com and click on the red button to see materials from the Financial Stability Program posted on October the 18th. Or call Legal Aid Foreclosure Hotline and you can get somebody to help you directly. So you think young people aren't focused on politics? Then you haven't discovered CincyPAC on Facebook. Where you been? Stay tuned. Welcome back. You may not realize it, but now is the time that the fall elections are taking shape. Hundreds of individuals across the region are weighing whether or not they want to run for local city council or school board. Political parties are trying to sift through all those potential candidates to figure out who has legs and who will just end up being ink on the ballot. This is also the time that politically active individuals and groups are looking at which candidates they want to back. One group in that category is CincyPAC, a political action organization of young professionals. To discuss CincyPAC, I'm joined this morning by Candace Klein, an attorney with Greenbaum, Dahl & McDonald, and president of CincyPAC. Candace was also the first chair of the Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory's Young Professional Kitchen Cabinet and was on the show at that time. And Joe Wessels, a freelance journalist, photographer, and currently the author of a column for City Beat, who has reported in the past for Cincinnati Post and is a longtime friend. Joe is chair of which committee for CincyPAC?
The Advocacy
The Advocacy Committee. Okay, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you very much.
Candace, what's the purpose of CincyPAC? When we think of PACs, we think of organizations that have lots of money and throwing money at politicians. Is that what you're doing?
Well, we are raising money. We hope to raise a lot of money and give that to politicians and to issues. We are a political action committee in the traditional sense of the word, but we have a very important mission. Our mission is to serve as a voice for young people in politics in Cincinnati. And so we understand that young professionals may not have a lot of money to give by themselves, but collectively, we do have an important impact on the city, and CincyPAC is meant to serve that.
So looking at what's coming up here, what races are you particularly interested in?
We are actually focused primarily on the City of Cincinnati races, so we will be looking and making endorsements for Cincinnati City Council, for Cincinnati Mayor, and possibly for some issues that might be hitting the ballot on the Cincinnati ballot.
Okay, so Joe, when the organization makes a recommendation, what do you do? Are you looking to give money to the people that you recommend? Are you looking to get people out there working? Are you trying to direct? One thing about young people in politics, they also have energy.
Sure.
Is that part of this too?
To answer your question, yes. Basically, to answer all that, exactly right. Money, getting people involved with the campaigns, working with the candidates to make sure that they understand the issues that are important to young professionals, and there are a variety of them too. And I think more and more politicians are understanding that the young professionals are a very important part of the fabric of the city.
Well, important part because the young professionals are the people who are shaping what's going to be in the future. It's not just the city at this moment, but they're the people who are rising to the positions of power that are going to really influence things. Now, CincyPAC's been around for a little while. You've endorsed some candidates in the past.
Correct.
What's your success level been?
Oh gosh.
We endorsed 7 candidates in 2007, and of the 7, 6 have now held office. Now, John Cranley and Greg Harris were both endorsed candidates in 2007, and
so one resigned, the other one took the place.
Right. So 5 of the current office holders were endorsed by CincyPAC in 2007.
Now, in some of those cases, those were probably pretty safe guess. I mean, you were endorsing people you supported, but they were probably going to win anyway. Now, Greg Harris did not win. Are you also looking for that candidate that maybe you can take over the top, who's maybe on the margin and isn't a sure thing?
Actually, that was the situation last time with Greg Harris and Pat Fisher. We had endorsed both of them. Both of them were challengers, and we thought that the CincyPAC endorsement could help significantly in both of their campaigns. And I think today, both of them would have still said that that was important.
Okay, and Pat Fisher's still out there. I don't know if he's going to run or not, but it's a possibility. He ran as a Republican.
Correct.
This is not a partisan group.
Not at all.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Endorse across party lines?
And our board of directors and our membership is made up of both Democrats and Republicans and people.
Charterites and independents.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a partisan organization at all. Now, we endorsed an overwhelming number of Democrats last time, but that was just, the way it fell out at that time.
But Pat's not a... Pat Fisher was not a Democrat. I want to make that clear. So what kind of issues is sort of cut it for CincyPAC? What do you care about? What are the issues that young professionals care about?
Well, our issues are actually defined by our members. We currently have 1,100 members as of 2007, and we're looking to at least double that this year.
And by the way, we're going to tell people how to get in touch here at the end, so pay attention.
And our members had defined for us that really 5 core values are important to attracting and retaining young talent in the city of Cincinnati. That's adequate transportation options, economic prosperity and job opportunity, diversity and inclusiveness, funding for the arts and programming for the arts, and health and sustainability of the environment. And those are the issues that we really focus on as an organization.
Well, you were talking about candidates, but you're also talking about potentially issues.
Correct.
In that transportation area, one of the issues that's probably going to be on the fall ballot is the streetcar question.
Correct.
Do you expect that you will take a position on that?
Well, I think we definitely will take a position. We did last time, but again, we're going to have a survey soon. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that we will ask our members exactly what is important to them. Now, last time streetcars was the top issue.
It was a top issue last time.
It was a top issue last time, exactly.
Overwhelmingly, our members supported a connection from uptown to downtown on the streetcar.
So how do you, when you want to survey your membership, how do you do that?
Well, online. We use an online survey tool. There's several of them out there. We use one in particular. And then we send an email out. We're going to send Twitters out, and we're going to send messages on Facebook and ask people to fill out the survey online.
Now, right away, what we've done is indicated this is about young professionals.
Correct.
Joe already talked about Facebook, Twitter, and for those of us who are a little bit older, who've made it to Facebook but not yet to Twitter, all of these things are part of what CincyPAC's doing, though.
But you are still invited to fill out that survey. As long as your mission is the same as our mission to attract and retain young talent, as long as those issues are important to you, those core values, we want your input as well.
So even though...
You're a young professional at heart, I think.
Hey, and I'm 35 years old, so, and I'm not going to, but I'm 35 years old. Somebody said to me,
so it's not about age.
Not at all.
It's about interest and that concern about attracting and retaining young talent in this community, which is so important to us on so many fronts.
I mean, CincyPAC is so much about the future of Cincinnati not only the present. I mean, I think that's a good way to put it, because the young professionals are about where the city is going, but also where it is today and where it can be tomorrow. So.
Okay. Well, this has all gone too quick, but we're going to stay in touch with you this fall.
Wonderful.
If you would like to connect with CincyPAC, try CincyPAC.com or blogspot.com,
Correct.
or connect through Facebook. Or get on Twitter and just look up Joe Wessels. He's on there all the time. So anyway,
Joe Wessels.
Candace, are you on Twitter?
I am.
All right, there you go. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, the role of railroads, there's the future, in our future, and the search for a new superintendent of the Cincinnati Public Schools. Have a good week.